I stood frozen at the edge of my field, watching strangers tear through my land like it was their own. No warning, no permission, just machines, noise, and dust where my father's olive trees once stood. One of them looked at me and laughed. "It's just dirt, old man," he said. But that dirt held memories, roots, and blood. They thought I was powerless. They didn't know I was building a storm they wouldn't survive. The storm begins. My name is Elias Mendoza. I've lived my entire life on this land in the quiet outskirts of Arroyo Valley, a place where time moves slower, but roots run deeper. My father bought this land in 1976, carved out every fence post with his hands, and planted every tree with dreams stitched into the soil. When he passed, this land didn't just become mine, it became my duty. A few years ago, I began noticing whispers of development creeping closer. New homes, concrete sidewalks, trucks rumbling down the old dirt paths. Still, I trusted that my small corner would remain untouched. Until the morning, everything changed. I woke to the earth shaking. At first, I thought it was a quake. They happen here from time to time. But the rumble didn't stop. It grew louder. When I looked out my window, I saw two excavators and a team of men in neon vests plowing straight into my east field. They had already flattened a section of fencing and were digging a deep trench, their machines clawing into the soil like it owed them something. I rushed out, heart pounding. "What the hell are you doing? This is private land." A man with a clipboard barely looked at me. "We're expanding the utility line for the housing project next door. You're on my land." He smirked. "Survey says otherwise." I showed him the markers. I pointed to the registered boundary maps. But he wouldn't look. "File a complaint," he said. "We're on a deadline." I spent the next hour trying to get someone, anyone, to listen, but they kept digging. By sunset, half an acre was torn apart. The next day, I brought out my father's old land deeds and took them to City Hall. The records were clear. They had crossed into my property by nearly 16 feet. When I returned home, I found the workers had set up temporary fencing on my side of the boundary. I called code enforcement. No answer. I called a lawyer. Too expensive. Then I remembered Marta, my neighbor. She'd fought the city once over flood damage. She introduced me to a local zoning advocate named Clara. Clara came by that same evening, looked over the evidence, and said something that would stick with me forever. "They think because you're quiet, you're weak. But paper leaves a trail, and we're going to light it up." We filed official complaints, backed by drone footage, dated photographs, survey records, and notarized land documents. We submitted everything to the planning board, the environmental committee, and even the local heritage trust, since a portion of the dug-up land bordered a protected eucalyptus grove. But while the paperwork moved, so did the destruction. By the end of the week, they had poured concrete right over my father's tree roots. That night, I sat by the stump of the largest olive tree he planted. I don't know how long I stayed there, but I remember saying out loud that they don't know what they've done. What they didn't realize was that every shovel of stolen soil was another nail in their own coffin. And when the verdict finally came, it didn't just cost them money. It cost them everything. 3 weeks passed. The developers thought they had won. They continued construction, laughing with the workers, pretending like I didn't exist. But what they didn't know was that the city had started listening. Clara's pressure on the zoning office finally paid off. A formal land inspection was scheduled, and when the inspector showed up, I made sure he saw everything. The boundary flags, the old trees, the concrete cuts, and even the trench that still scarred the earth. He didn't say much. I just took pictures, nodded, took notes. 5 days later, the letters arrived, not to me, but to them. And I'll never forget the morning they received them. I was sipping coffee on my porch when I heard raised voices, panic, cursing, shouts like cornered animals. 2 trucks rolled off the site, and a third stayed parked with its hazard lights blinking for over an hour. Clara called me that afternoon. "They've been hit with a $150,000 fine," she said calmly. My hand trembled holding the phone. She continued, 6 counts of code violations, trespassing, environmental disturbance, improper permitting, unauthorized infrastructure, boundary destruction, and failure to notify adjacent landowners. It didn't end there. They were ordered to restore the damaged land fully. That meant removing the poured concrete, replanting at least 12 native trees, rebuilding the fence they destroyed, paying for soil rehabilitation and erosion control. But that was just the government's penalty. I wasn't done yet. I filed a civil lawsuit for emotional distress, land devaluation, and property damage. My case wasn't flashy, it was honest. Photographic proof, a clear boundary, a lost heritage. In court, their lawyer tried to claim it was an innocent surveying error. But when the judge saw dated drone footage, the case crumbled. They lost. They were ordered to pay me an additional $32,000 in damages. But here's the part they never expected. I used a portion of that money to build something they couldn't destroy. A small greenhouse, right where they dug. And every visitor who comes by asks, "Why here?" I tell them, because this is where I buried the lie and planted the truth. A month later, the construction signs disappeared. The company went quiet. I later found out that 3 other homeowners canceled their contracts after hearing what happened to me. Their billboard ads were removed. Their trucks stopped appearing. Their name? Replaced by a silence they could no longer ignore. People often think revenge means anger. But real revenge? It's justice served without shouting. It's a tree growing where destruction once stood. If this story moved you, even a little, I'd like to ask you for just one simple thing. Subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us bring you more powerful, real-life inspired stories that echo the voices of the unheard. Stories of justice, struggle, and quiet strength. And if you've ever felt powerless, just remember, even the softest voice can shake the ground if it's rooted in truth. Subscribe now. Let's grow together.